Rick, I'm in your part of the world.
Yeah, you've come down to a brisk Melbourne morning.
You told me it was going to be warmer. We're out on Port Phillip Bay. It's a pressured fishery. And today we're using bait techniques. And at the end of the day, bait fishing techniques have not changed that much in the last many years. But what has changed is some of the finer points, some of our strategies. So some of the product we use these days is a whole lot better. And today, it's very much about showing you some of that refinement. And being that we fish in pressured fisheries today, fish respond to that pressure. You've got to be smarter, you've got to be better, mate. And so I'm hooked up already, so we're doing something right. Hang around and we're going to show you some of that refinement in a little while. This is on a dropper rig right beneath the boat, Rick, just while we're setting up. Beauty of snapper fishing, obviously when you find the fish, you can start putting baits in amongst them. The action's going to be there for you to get into straight away, and that's the benefit of driving around for a while before you found them. The sun's obviously up. We came out at first light, but it's taken us this long to find fish, and there's the merit, Rick, and obviously not stopping until you found your fish.
We sounded fish directly under the boat, so it's always essential to have a couple of rods rigged just with a paternoster rig, and that way you can drop it straight down while you're getting all your other baits organised to throw out your set lines. And yeah, just you drop this one down while we're getting all the other rods out, and the fish has come along and grabbed it straight away.
Not a bad fish either, mate.
No, he's a nice fish.
That is a nice fish. And there's number one on the board. Have a look at that. He's got a bit of weight about him,
it's a good fish. Very good fish, nice and fat.
First, we got double-handed approach happening today. We got floaters out the back, which Rick was in the process of getting ready while I put the droppers down, and which didn't take us long because we were straight onto the fish. And when they're under the boat, prime rig for doing it. Obviously not too heavily weighted, we want a natural bait presentation. We are using two different styles of hooks today.
That's correct.
And this is a circle hook, which is a great one to have on your paternoster rigs because they do a lot of the hooking work for you. And so while a rod sits in the rod holder, fish comes and sucks it in. Away you go.
Yeah, well, what we're doing here, we've got two rigs as we mentioned before, paternoster rig, and then we've got a running sinker rig. In Port Phillip Bay where we are today, there's very little tidal flow in the water. So what we like to do is we like to create a good burley trail, and then we'll throw out our baits a fair distance from the boat and we'll let them slowly drift down naturally with the bait. So we only need a very small sinker. I've got this sinker running freely on this rig, and we have about a metre trace because obviously they're quite tough in the mouth, these fish, so we do need some heavier material there. What I'm using today is a couple of the new Senshi hooks. These are the octopus style hooks. They're a chemically sharpened hook, nice and sharp. All I've simply done is got the first hook and I've rigged that through just between the gills and then brought that point out through the eye of the hook, and it's nice and flat. Then I'm getting the second hook, I'm actually putting that towards the rear of the fish, and I'm going to pop that through the other side so it's actually sitting out the other side of the fish. I can then sit that up so it's nice and tight, half hitch around the tail, so that way what happens is when we go to present the bait it sits nice and flat in the water, and then it sits nice and straight and it doesn't spin or anything as well. So, and then simply all we're going to do now is cast it out. I'll let that drift down for a little bit and then I'll click that bail arm over. Pop her in the rod holder. Simple as that. One of the other strategies too that we are doing, Nigel, today is throwing a little bit of burley out. And that's essential too in Port Phillip Bay, is sometimes you do need to bring those fish in a little bit. So we've got these nice new heavy pellets, really well scented, just slowly sinking them down and then feeding out those baits down that burley trail. And that's one of the other essential ingredients of obviously success in Port Phillip Bay.
There's a rig that's doing the damage at the moment, carefully tied up last night, which is sometimes the key to catching fish, being prepared the moment you put the anchor out. We've got a light leader class, lightly weighted sinker, 5/0 circle hook, half cut bait. So it's very easy for a fish to come up, looks natural, easy to sip in. That's the key to catching them some days, something that looks natural. Drop that to bottom, put it in the rod holder, let the rod do the work. I reckon I might sit back. Read the footy news, Rick, it's what you do in Melbourne, isn't it?
That's what we do this time of year.
Wait for the fish to come to the party.
Oh, look at that, that's a great fish there, Nige.
That's what we wanted, Rick.
That's exactly what we wanted.
Oh yes.
And again on that paternoster rig, just dropping it straight down under the boat.
Beautiful. Easy to do. Come out in the morning and into the bay. Bunch of spin outfits, 20 pound mono, A couple of different rig options. One out the back of the boat, one straight underneath the boat. He's playing up for us nicely, Rick.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a good fish. You usually tell good snapper the way that it's running. Got the good head shakes as well. Here he comes, we can see colour. Lovely fish.
How cool is it watching these things come up? They are just splendid looking fish.
And look at the colours in that fish.
I'll introduce him to Net Rick.
And that hook right in the corner again. Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's a cracking fish there, Nige.
Woohoo! Aren't we having some fun on these today? You beauty.
There's two hook types we're using today. One the octopus or J-style hook, and the other a circle called the Matsu circle style hook. Octopus hook we're using on our flat lines, casting a long way out and letting the bait slowly sink down. The Matsu circle, we're letting that fish on a paternoster rig and we're just dropping that directly under the boat. New to the market this year are these fantastic new hooks from Senchi, and they're going to improve your fishing for a whole number of reasons. Firstly, they're chemically sharpened, and that's going to improve your hook penetration. Also, they're black nickel plated, and they're made from high carbon steel, which has a number of advantages. The reason I use Senchi hooks is that they give a better bait presentation. They also improve hook set, and they offer a large variety that will suit all forms of fishing across Australia. We'll talk to you today about one of the rigs we're using, which is a flatline rig, which is probably the most popular way to fish in Port Phillip Bay where we're fishing today. What we basically have is a main running line. It varies between 12 and 20 pound. We've got around 15 pound on today on this outfit. We then run that to a rolling swivel. The idea of this rolling swivel is that eliminates any twist through the main line that baits can cause if they're incorrectly rigged when they spin. From that we then go to a trace of around a metre. Some anglers run up to 60 pound. They've found that with the snapper, with their sharp teeth and jaws, that they do wear through heavy leader, so anglers sometimes do fish heavy. We're fishing around 30 pound today, and this trace is around a metre. We run that to a 2-hook rig, which is a snooted rig. What we do is we vary the length of the drop depending on the baits we're using, and the octopus style hook is the preferred hook for this style of rig, and you can vary your hook sizes between 4.0 and 7.0. Now we'll talk to you about some of the key baits for flatlining and float fishing for snapper. The humble Western Australian pilchard, this is probably the bait that started it all off, particularly in Port Phillip Bay. Huge bait. Early on in the season we find the fish prefer softer baits. This is a gun bait. Apart from the WA pilchard, you've got the American squid. This again is a very good bait. Very soft as well, but a lot tougher. So when you've got pickers around like flathead, this is a great bait to use. Other baits that work well and have been introduced in the last few years that a lot of anglers are using is the sowie. The sowie, like the pilchard, is a very oily, soft bait. So again, this is a good alternative and great to have one of these out. And with the snapper fishermen, generally, particularly where we are today in Port Phillip Bay, they usually like to run a set of 6 or 8 rods, depending on how many anglers are on the boat, but usually they'd have 6 or 8 rods out. You don't want to throw 6 or 8 rods out and have pilchards on every rod. So it's good to alternate your baits and mix your baits up and then find what the fish are taking, and then once you find that you're getting multiple fish on a particular bait, then you can then rig all rods up with that bait. The other bait that's been introduced in the last few years and has become very popular is the silver whiting. This bait's a very tough bait, so again, when you've got pickers around, it's also great at night time. We get a lot of lice in Port Phillip Bay where we are today, and they don't seem to destroy this as quickly as they do the softer baits like pilchards. Yep, here we go again. Just dropped a bait down straight under the boat again and on again with that paternoster rig. It seems to be working really well today. Tell by the head shakes, it's a nice snapper. Being overcast, it means the fish aren't as shy. We've got a very, very small sinker. I'd say around a 1 ounce bomb sinker on the bottom. And all we're doing is dropping it to the bottom with slack line and then just wind it 1 or 2 turns off the bottom and just let the baits bounce naturally with the boat movement. And sometimes that's what entices the snapper on.
It's Today we've got a mix of 6 to 10 kilo and 8 to 10 kilo spin outfits, 20 pound monofilament mainline, and Rick, we've obviously got a couple of different leader options. We've got 20, 30 and 40 pound now. Funnily enough, this is the 20 pound leader I tied on last night. Mate, while you're doing that, I'm just going to grab a rod on the other side of the boat because it's buckling. We've got another fish.
Yeah, we've got another fish on the other side, and that's on the paternoster rig as well.
Welcome to snapper time.
So it's action at all stations at the moment. We've got a nice double hook up here.
Yo!
Just what you want. This is a really good fish, paternoster rig. This is a new range of hooks that we've brought onto the market called senshi, and it means warrior in Japanese. And these are a circle hook. This fish with the circle hooks, it's hooked perfectly in the side of the jaw. And that's a really nice, solid, fresh fish into the bay for this season. You can see it's nice and clear in colour. Nice pink colour. I'll just put that rod in the rod holder. See that circle hook, the Matsu circle from senshi, hooked perfectly in the corner of the fish's jaw. And the leaders hanging out so you can fish those lighter leaders, and they've got massive sharp teeth on them, snapper. So with the lighter leader and the circle hook, it keeps it away from those sharp teeth, and you can fish lighter, and usually the lighter you can fish, the better the bait presentation.
Happy days. This is what happens when you find your fish in a bay fishery like Port Phillip Bay. Get those baits down to them, and obviously natural presentations. We're talking before about getting your strategy right. When it comes to pressured fish, that they see a lot of people these days. They see a lot of baits. They hear a lot of boats. You and I were talking on the way here about how strange it is that so many people spend so much time and money with their boats, their motors, their trailers, their cars, and sometimes we just neglect some of the finer points of our tackle, like our knots and our hooks.
As you mentioned earlier on, 20 pound leader. A lot of anglers in Port Phillip Bay do fish 40, 60 pound leaders because they've had a lot of fish in the past where they've hooked them up and those sharp mouths and teeth have actually worn through the leader. The big advantage of the circle hook, as we can see here, our leaders are pointing away from the mouth of the fish, so we can fish lighter and more natural bait presentation.
You know, last night we spoke about the strategy we're going to use. Whole baits out wide on the 2-hook setup. Underneath though, light leaders, small baits. Funnily enough, the small baits are getting eaten, the fish are just sipping them in and off they go on their business, and we've got a couple of nice ones in the boat, mate, and I think we've chatted enough because I reckon there's more to catch. Let's put them away and get back into catching some more.
To keep up to date with everything the Fishing Show crew is up to, including our latest competitions and prize giveaways, head over to our Facebook page, AFN The Fishing Show. And if you're keen for content, AFN TV is now free to join with over 1,000 videos at your fingertips, plus tip and tactics from Bill and myself.